Welcome. You're listening to Guiding Stars. I'm here with Ari Moshe today. We are discussing Chiron through the houses and signs, and we have reached number 9, Sagittarius. If you have Chiron in Sagittarius or the 9th house, we are going to be talking about you today or somebody you know or love or a client. So welcome. We have a lot to share today, and I'd like to say hello to Ari. Welcome back to Guiding Stars.
Thank you. Good to be here. Check it out. This is Michelle gave me this mug. It's my Sagittarius mug.
Oh, I have one just like it. Exactly like it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. I keep all my pens in that because very big and heavy thing. Pens and pencils. And I just have to say, gosh, I want to thank Linda Johnson. She does such a great job of helping us with these wonderful thumbnails and images that we kind of pick out and she puts together. And I can really relate to this girl running into the woods with her dress on. Because I was
in 1 minute that dress is going to be off.
Exactly. Yeah. And exactly. And being that I was raised having to wear dresses, I can't remember the last time I wore one. I don't know, 20 years ago maybe. But anyway, yeah, I can relate to this. And just when I look at this image, I think of this patriarchal conditioning that this girl here was subjected to, and maybe she decided it was safer to be born into families where she could hide, or being a free spirit, or having a voice for a woman, and for many thousands of years didn't always lead to the best kind of outcomes. Obviously the voice, the feminine, so much of the feminine has been repressed. And even as a man, to be natural in the world, of course, there would be consequences for that. 9th house is all about natural ways in the world and where we feel authentic, organic, how we naturally express ourselves, and whatever's sitting in that 9th house, wherever Jupiter is, if you have planets in Sagittarius, you know what I'm talking about. And so Chiron, obviously in Sagittarius in the 9th house, would be a wound around your nature, potentially, or how you express your truth, what it means to express your truth, what that looks like. And with Chiron there, I'm sure there's going to be wounds around that, around when you have been honest, perhaps, or maybe you've been dishonest because you were afraid of being judged or persecuted for such things. There's any number of possibilities here, and we're going to talk more deeply about that. And if you're looking for an in-depth understanding of Chiron itself, we have discussed that at the beginning of many of the prior shows. Chiron in Aries, first house, probably for the first 4 shows, huh, Ari? We really got into that.
Yeah, until we got part of that.
Those are available on YouTube. Unless you want to kind of give a foundation of that now, I don't know what you would like to do, but I don't want to be too redundant. That's all.
Yeah, let's jump into the 9th house because it's all there.
All right.
And also, we are living, walking examples of Chiron in the 9th. So me and you both have that. So we'll get to talk about ourselves, I think.
We both have that, exactly. And we've got to take a peek at your chart later too, Ari, if you have that. Definitely. So let's just talk about the archetype then. I'll let you start. I kind of shared little bits and pieces there. I'm speaking from experience. You too. Speak from experience. Let the world know what it feels like.
And that's the essence of it. That is the essence of the 9th house, because really there are 2 ways to speak about something. Either we're replaying a past understanding or something we've heard from someone else, or a revelation that was true at a different moment, and then we're replaying it. But really in that replaying it, it's not actually real. There's no direct connection to it. And that's where consciousness can sort of categorize an understanding of things and then take that understanding and put it into this moment, as opposed to talking about something where that speaking itself is one of connecting within the moment with the essence of it. So when I speak about the 9th house, there's a connecting with what the 9th house energetically symbolizes inside, outside, and all around. And I can speak about it and just draw upon all the things that I know how to say. And that's a ninth house Sag thing. It's like, you know how to say the things that you know how to say that sound believable and, convincing. So, ninth house is long journeys and our beliefs and yada, we can do that. And I could even do that if I wanted to. I can do it with a tone or an expression of a conviction. But is it authentic? And in ninth house, we have two concepts. We have both where we come unto our own direct form of spirituality, where we come to walk the path of uncovering greater comprehension, greater understanding, a more encompassing apprehension of reality, to see more of the picture. So there is for each one of us within the ninth house journey a sense of there's something more. I'm on this journey, I'm on this path, and like here I am in relation to all of life, to all of the cosmos. And there's an ongoing sense of discovery that there's more to understand, more to realize. And thus, when it comes to our own aspirations in life, that which is unfolding and growing within us and what we're personally called to, as well as our philosophical understanding of what is this all about. So we have within the ninth house the archetype of the spiritual seeker, just as much as we have the archetype of the salesperson that's going to pitch you something, or any experience in life where we're moving on an intuitive sense towards something more, a greater expanse of opportunity in our own lives. So that's one expression. The other expression of the ninth house is, actually, let me come back to where I was going with that. I forgot. Well, anyway, that's one expression. And so let me just touch base, and if you have something to say, but let me come back to where I'm going.
Yeah, one of the things you said about even saying something that isn't true, I think you said this house, ninth house, connects to, when we talk about our truth or beliefs, of course it connects to our beliefs. The wound, the Chiron piece too, could be connected to following false teachers, or being involved in religious realms, or being born into families where that was a part of your reality and upbringing. So it is one belief among many, not necessarily true. Just because it's a belief doesn't mean it's true. So that's where that wounding can happen, when you are raised to believe something that isn't true. Right? Like the word lie sits in the middle of the word belief. And I feel like a lot of religions, there are truths that live and exist within all religions, but there's also many things that are part of certain faiths that are very much about separation and exclusion versus the natural path to truth, which is inclusion.
Now I remember.
Oh, you remember. Sparked a memory.
Nature.
Nature.
Because the ninth house, just as much as it speaks to where we're all expanding our consciousness to understand and experience more in life, and just to grow our understanding of what this is all about, it's also what is natural. So the ninth house also corresponds to the energy of what is natural, what is authentic. And the reason for that is because if we're discovering reality, if we're growing our understanding and our connection to all that is, it must mean that we don't need to look very far to understand what this is all about. We don't need to look into philosophical systems or complex conceptions in order to understand our nature. So the principles of the Tao are like the Tao itself, right? Like undifferentiated whole, Pisces. But the principles, our understanding of it, are the wisdom that we cultivate. It happens when we just sit, and we can go to the river, we can go to the forest, we can watch our dog, we can just watch ourselves. When we have a direct connection with what's natural. So this is where in the ninth house, we have the energy of authentic, the energy of what's natural, of being natural, because all of those things resonate with honesty, resonate with truth. And it's so straightforward. we're not going to find the truth of reality if we're lying. If we're operating under a belief system, which is, I love what you said. I never thought of that actually. There's lie in a belief. Like a belief system literally says you don't know.
Right.
It has nothing to do with direct experience. Like I can believe in anything, great, but that has nothing to do with honesty. So what we know, we irrefutably know. And what we know, it's not something we can empirically explain. And we're not going to need or feel any need to prove it or to make others know what we know either. Because when we know something, it's an internal experience. It's irrefutable because it's like, what's the taste of orange juice? Well, when you taste it, you know it, right? You don't have to prove it or argue it. It's meaningless. And there's that Buddhist teaching that something like, just like the ocean tastes like salt, the truth tastes like freedom. So when we taste the truth, we know. And a sign that we're not tasting the truth, but rather that we're tasting something we want to be true, we're trying to convince ourselves that, yes, this is the truth, or I have the answer. And we do that because of a need to maintain security. We're afraid that if I don't know, that I am inadequate. And that's a big Chiron rune that we'll talk about in a moment. But one of the things that we'll do that will prove that we're actually not operating from true knowing is we'll be very, very concerned with other people believing us. So we either need to convince them or we'll somehow need to prove our point because we'll be really sensitive to this possibility of not being believed. And we can develop all kinds of compensatory measures as a result of that insecurity. And so one last final point of the ninth house is the beauty and the power in the ninth house is this quality of authenticity where we each have the opportunity in the way of living our life in a way that's totally authentic and natural for our own nature. And this is the power of a real teacher that can maybe help us and guide us along their journey. Because what's the energy of a teacher? Simply, they've had direct experiences. So they've tasted much of their own way. And thus they have the ability to appreciate and recognize other souls on their journey. And the key is to not impose, you have to have the same experiences that I had in order to come to the same realizations. But rather, I appreciate and I can see and understand the archetypal unfolding of your own evolutionary journey. And I support you in having your own experience. And that's one of the deepest fine lines and delicate places of the ninth house, especially with Chiron. Because we can have wounding that focalizes entirely around believing something that you were told to believe, and thus a deep sense of value and adequacy and credibility is established relative to a sense of, okay, I'm fitting into this person's truth. I'm doing this meditation practice. I'm living in this way. I'm following this spiritual path, or I'm doing this thing to make more money or earn friends and become likable. Like all these different ninth house aspirations for growth and success. But we can actually be alienating ourselves from what's naturally true to us by following someone else's path. And then it's like, oh, everyone's like, wow, you're so successful, or you're so spiritual, or you're so good looking, or everyone likes you, or you read Dale Carnegie's book, and you went to Tony's workshop, whatever his name is. And, you know, all these different things that can have this appearance of big, right? Because that's the whole compensation of the ninth house. It's big can replace authentic. And so there can be a lot of wounding just in that sense of deep alienation of, this is not my honest life. This is not true for me. And so in the ninth house, there's great importance for the student and for the teacher to really be honoring the energy of authenticity. You know, the teacher grows a lot through their relationship with their students, in that it's their growth in learning how to expand their own appreciation of the truth, how it's manifesting, unfolding through each person's unique path, unique nature.
Oh, Ari, I can't hear you. Are you there?
Oh, am I silenced again? Okay, let me change locations.
Okay.
Okay, we're back recording. Share the screen again. Okay. So let me just make sure we're recording. Okay, good. So the growth that a teacher experiences is becoming more and more attuned to the authentic nature of each student, and the student, that square between Virgo and Sag, really having that discernment. Is this my own nature? With Chiron in the ninth house, one of the wounding experiences that we can have, and this can be as a teacher, is misleading people, setting them down a path that is not true for them. And we can be very convincing in the ninth house as well. We can be like, this is the right way, and this is my experience. Or we can have an issue. We are talking about something you know nothing about. It's like you get a reading with someone, and it was really inspiring, and you were like totally amazed by what a person can look at it in your chart. And then you're like, well, I'm going to become an astrologer. And you start giving readings to people before you've ever studied it. And so there can be this real issue where a soul is professing some sort of understanding that resonates with an element of intuitive understanding, but hasn't actually become integrated yet. And in that sense, they can really mislead people and hurt people on their own path. In that same sense, Chiron in the ninth house, the core wound, I would say, is twofold. It's one, it's the wound of alienation. Like, I can't be authentic with myself. I can't walk my path. I have to be something else, which really resonates with the energy of restlessness, always running somewhere else, always going somewhere else because I can't be who I am here. But also a deep wound in guilt, in believing and picturing oneself to not be wise enough, to not have the ability to know the truth, to not have the ability to actually live authentically. And we'll talk more about that in a moment, but I feel like that is such a core piece of the Chironic healing. But do you want to share more about this?
I do. And as you're talking, I was looking at this image again. She's running away from a place that doesn't feel, from what I can gather in this image, natural for her. She's in this dress, and like you said, she can't wait to get it off, or just to be out there in the woods, running to or trying to find her way back home, I would say, really. But at the very beginning of my journey in astrology, when I discovered EA and was fortunate enough to participate in some of the early schools when Jeff Green was teaching, at that time in my life, I was a runner. I did a lot of races, 5Ks, 10Ks, even a marathon. I just enjoyed how it felt to run. And I definitely know that's part of my spirit. I've got that kind of warrior spirit. It does help move energy. But after class, sometimes I would throw on my running shoes and go for a run. And of course, Jeffrey had done a reading for me, so he knew my chart. And on one of the breaks, he asked me, so Kristin, what are you running from? I've got this ninth house Chiron. And of course, I wanted to give him this explanation that I just feel good when I run. It moves energy, and the endorphins give me a lift and feel rejuvenated. And of course, he knows that about me, like this Amazon spirit, wild child of sorts. But he was really trying to bring my attention to something. And there is this restlessness that can occur with Chiron in the ninth, if at all we are ever limited by anything, or we find ourselves in an environment that doesn't reflect our nature. And part of the nature of the ninth house or Sagittarian influence is the need for space, expansive space and wide open horizons.
Indeed.
So you can ride your horse into, to the sunset, and keep riding till you find what you're looking for. In a sense, it's that there is this need or the need for freedom to experience that space. And so those words echoed in my mind for many years. And part of the running with the wound in the ninth house is being afraid of what you will find when you stop and you look at who you are in the context perhaps of this world. Would I fit in? Will I be alienated? Will I be judged for it? Is there anyone else in the world like me? Because I'm afraid there might not be. And then what? And so you put on the dress and you sit at the table and you behave like everyone else, and you're like, well, I just feel miserable here. I got to get out of here. I'm running back to the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, I will hike in the woods with my dog, but I don't run. And if I have a choice, I will sit and meditate and really try and get to the root, of how I was designed by God, my natural thumbprint.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our own unique individual thumbprint, which is the soul. So anyway, the running is a real signature of Chiron in the ninth house, running from your nature.
Mm-hmm. In the Chiron in the ninth house, one of the deepest areas of pain that a soul can experience is one of feeling like a phony, feeling inauthentic to one's bones. We have a lot of souls with Chiron in the ninth house that are teaching, or they're following a certain spiritual path, or they're following a religion, or they have some kind of dharma to speak the truth in a way. And in engaging with that territory in a Chiron kind of way, in doing the teaching, in following this path of truth speaking, there's a very raw experience of, I'm not being honest. This is not authentic. And it's that very juncture where there might be guilt from the past of speaking about things one didn't know, not coming from one's own true authentic space. And the thing is, the antidote to the ninth house is you don't need to go and practice and put on a different hat and adopt to some other culture. And culture is a ninth house thing. You don't have to go to a foreign land or become really good at being something that you're not. The whole study of the cosmos, of our own place in it, is really the study of our own nature. Like you said, as we have been created and designed, our own unique soul imprint, blueprint. And really coming to know our own nature is an incredibly freeing and validating experience. And again, it's like the truth of it is something only that we can validate for our own self. When people eat food with me, every once in a while, they're like, oh, why don't you use forks? And I don't think about it anymore. It's just, it's not an ism, right? I just tend to use my hands because it makes sense to me. And I've been like that forever. There are certain things in me that maybe for a small period of my life, I did what I was told to do, but it didn't really stick. But I watch how things can become an ism. And when a thing becomes an ism, it's almost a way of compensating from this deep internal sense of my own truth isn't enough. The authentic being. And there's nothing wrong necessarily with these different paths and isms. There's value in everything. But the the greater truth of who we are can't be put into an ism, like a eat with your hands ism, or a certain kind of diet ism. These are all now beliefs. These are all now constructs, philosophies that we're saying, this is my truth. But the truth is more of a present moment thing, to find our way in that. So we'll look at some charts, and we'll look at our own charts. We should probably start with our own charts so we can really enjoy doing that first. Do you want to talk about yours? Yeah.
I want to share something. I was raised, of course, in this traditional family. My dad loved going to nice restaurants. And we always had dinner on the table at 5 or 6 at night. My mom would cook dinner. And I cannot remember a dinner where my mom wasn't telling me to use my utensils instead of my hands. Right. I mean, and still to this day, I would far rather, just use my hands. And I'm a twin, and we are different souls. And that was never something that she thought to do. So another example of just two souls having, on a different journey. And And yeah, that's a very Sagittarian. Just, I want to feel my food, I guess, with my, I don't know what it is, but I can really relate to that.
Yeah. I mean, there are just certain things about how we do this human thing that supposes an antithetical relationship with nature.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like the evolution of our consciousness on this planet as we progress in the yugas and the ages is one of deeper and deeper realization that our own being belongs in this natural world, that we don't have to fear it, that we are designed to be a part of this natural world, and this natural world is its own technology that we can live and harmonize with. So it's funny to see all the constructs that we built, and that's why Sag ninth house people don't like wearing clothing. It's just so artificial. Like there's a functionality to it, but beyond that, I mean, I'm not wearing clothing as much as possible because it's such an imposition. And what you said feels so true for me. That need for space and freedom. I'll say one thing. A lot of people misunderstand, and misunderstanding is a ninth house thing. Misunderstanding really reflects the idea of actions and ways of being misinterpreted and being put into a category, whereas it's actually kind of beyond category. The misunderstanding that I often see with the ninth house is this sort of open-ended need for freedom. Like ninth house, you can't commit. You need to stay free. But the root of that need for spaciousness is simply because life is spacious. Nature is spacious. Our own nature is spacious. And when we have this internal feeling of freedom, that there's a lot of space to find our way, then our own unique path has the space to speak to us, right? We can be guided by our intuition. But the moment we're telling ourselves, well, I have to make sure I walk this way, or I do it this way, or I wear it this way, or I eat this way, or these are the parameters of my spirituality. The moment we create these confines in our mind, the moment that needed expanse is gone, and we don't give our intuition the space to lead the way. And with Chiron in the ninth, there's a deep validation for oneself to give to themselves spaciousness and freedom to find their authentic way. And it might not be understood, right? Depending on what you got going on with that Chiron, there might be a lot of misunderstanding, and you might be alone in that. But through that freedom, we allow ourselves to land upon that taste of, this is what I'm here for. This is my purpose for being.
Yep.
So we have your chart.
And okay, and one other quote from JG that struck me between the eyes in one of the first schools, and I've shared this before when talking about Saturn in particular, but he says, do you have any idea how much energy it takes to repress what is natural? So by holding back and stuffing down and not honoring your nature, it's exhausting. It's taking so much energy, as you said, to pretend you're somebody that you're not, or something like that. So that was another one that really hit me, because
you got Saturn up there with Chiron, so it's really relevant for you.
Yeah.
So do you want to give a little context for your Chiron? I feel like it's really, really fascinating.
Yeah, well, I've shared a bit with this image. It's just my past, for sure. I definitely had, I know, a life in the Victorian times, and kind of an arranged marriage situation, a lot of money, so allowed us to have horses, which is what I wanted, horses. But of course, I could only live, there's been a series of lifetimes where I've been trying to work my way back to my nature. Things don't, once you start really getting off track, it's going to take some time to find your way back. So there's been a series of lifetimes that I've uncovered through dream, and with Jeff's help way back when, that have really were powerful teachers for me. But the image on the front with the girl running into the woods was just that, like running away from, and I did many lives of literally on the run from whatever lifetime I was born into, because at one point you wake up and you would rather die than be there anymore, that kind of feeling. And so the girl is just literally leaving with the clothes off her back, which was me, and like in a couple of lifetimes that I have memories of. They didn't end well, didn't live long, because who can survive that way, right? So anyway, the Chiron in Pisces is definitely the hiding signature, hiding from my nature, then ultimately hiding when I ran away to try and survive. There's been a series of those themes. And you look to the ruler of that Chiron in Pisces, and it's in Scorpio. Neptune is in Scorpio in the 5th house. So where I hid was within prominent families, wealthy families, Leonian realities. And so this life, though, what I like about this alignment to the Neptune, since it does rule the Saturn, is that this would be a lifetime when I could, in the Saturn squares and nodes, recover that skip step through that Chiron, through this Saturn wide trine to the Neptune. And it has moved beyond the square to the nodes, that Saturn as well, way beyond with Chiron. Again, it's been a series of lifetimes, so it's not like the first time in the last 20 years. Being involved in EA has helped me to eliminate all the layers and of emotional clothing and conditioning. I wouldn't say I'm all the way there, but I'm very close in a lot of ways. And so it's taken it's about being honest with yourself and not being afraid of what that means, what that looks like. And ultimately it's really about healing my nature, in this case, healing who I am and being okay with what that is, regardless of what consensus has to say about it.
And would you say that your role as a teacher with Pisces 9th house Chiron is to bring this element of forgiveness and unconditional love, that people's path, their own journey is acceptable by God?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, really, that's where it came down to it, is just understanding that God created me in a certain way, and my responsibility, all that Capricorn, my responsibility is to be who I am and to shine a light for others so they can be who they are. And to forgive myself, or to forgive others, and to create a space of compassion and forgiveness for other people to be able to offer that kind of forgiveness to themselves, and to help them heal whatever it feels to be so broken within their own nature, and to empower them in that way. I mean, that is a big part of it. Empower them with the teachings, with that Pluto in the 3rd house. And it's a big part of my practice. I would say women in particular, although I've talked to plenty of men, but really women who have just not felt like they were enough, or were in search of so much more than they are or they have, and they could feel these deep rumblings, this special sense of something far more. And it's that feeling that when you tap into for a client, once you just put a light under that, or fire under that, it can be sustained for the rest of the life. Because when you realize, when you can get in touch with the truth of anything, nothing is more important than that for any soul. Because the truth will live on. It's not going to fade away. It's not supported by toothpicks or something weak, something that can't sustain it. It exists, and it will prevail. The truth will prevail. I mean, you can see this happening even in our political system. Eventually the truth comes out. So I would say, it's been an incredible opportunity. My own journey has allowed me to then teach others, and to know what they're feeling, to say, I've been there, and if I can do it, you can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. You know, that kind of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I remember too that Jeffrey used to say to me that you are a wild stallion that cannot be broken.
Yeah, there you go.
And that, when he said those words to me, like that tapped into my core essence from many, 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 many lifetimes ago. That is how God designed me, you know. And my soul had gotten so far off that track because of persecutions, etc. I mean, even going back to that life in the Victorian time that I shared with you, when we had enough money to have a bunch of horses, that was getting me back closer to my nature, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even though it was this conditioned reality, I was in proximity to something that was a part of me.
Isn't that cool how that works?
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, and just looking at this Neptune trining and ruling all that Pisces, and it's in the 5th house, obviously this theme of hiding, right? Like hiding your own nature, and how it can sort of become a blending of just becoming an anonymous figure. Oh, 1 second. I'm teaching a class right now. I'll talk to you afterwards. And so, 6-year-old. And so I can see how with this progression for you, there's this theme of allowing yourself to be more seen as well, just as you are, and the healing and the forgiveness and allowing your own natural self, being the teaching itself being about being natural and not being something. And I can speak for myself. I'm always excited to see your face, and maybe one day you'll
yeah.
get out of that hiding, and you'll allow everyone to see your face too, but you don't have to.
Yeah. Well, you know, I've been out in the world doing lectures and workshops and stuff. I don't totally stay in that space, but
all right.
You know, what I would say is, you know, part of that too is because of the Saturn squaring the nodes. You know, there's been so much judgment that's come at me in other times,
right?
You know, that it creates this sort of emotional freeze if I pick up energy where that's coming at me. And so, and I'm not saying that's happening, you know, when we're doing webinars or what have you. I mean, even when I started lecturing, I would have, you know, all of the information I wanted to share. And I'm so sensitive because of this Saturn and Pisces. I'm so insensitive to my environment that I can pick up energy I don't want to be picking up. And then I get distracted about what I want to say. If I feel someone's looking at me funny, or they don't understand something I'm saying, and then I get totally off course. And what I care most about is just being able to share information that's of benefit to people. So anyway, that's where that comes from.
Yeah.
One day we'll go live.
Yeah, if it feels right for you. But I understand that, and I respect that too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm doing a lot of videos, and I posted a video last night, and this one person posted on my YouTube channel that she was deeply offended that I used the word frickin'.
No way.
And I'm like, oh, that hurts.
I know.
But it's like, that's a part. I had to let that go. And she unsubscribed.
Did you really you just said that word frickin'? You didn't actually say
you know, and she was very offended by, like, I call it heart and soul centered astrology, and that wasn't heart and soul centered in her view. But I mean, it's great because that kind of, that, you know, we can look at my chart and kind of launch right into, like, my whole path is being stable. Taurus in the 9th house, and not stubborn, stable, because that's not really useful, but to trust myself. And that the wounding for me is really about a degradation of self-worth and self-esteem. Taurus, 9th house. Not really believing my own role as a teacher, my ability to live authentically as adequate and valuable. And so one of the issues with Taurus in the 9th house can be, one, kind of setting down shop with a certain idea of, this is my work, this is what I do, this is my teaching, this is what it looks like. And it can look very good. You know, I've done that before in various phases where there's this appearance of stability, the show of stability, but inside not really feeling like I'm being true to myself. And so the stability that I'm looking for, that I'm unraveling on my own path with Taurus and ninth house, is one of being in my body, feeling landed, feeling rested, feeling at ease, feeling at peace, so that there's a sense of comfort and groundedness, and that my teaching comes from such a place. So like earlier today, we had to move from where I was sitting at my desk to this spot because today there's Wi-Fi issues. And I was using, as I was doing that, well, this is Taurus in the ninth house. You know, you move everything with you as you teach. But the idea of staying stable within, maintaining a certain level of stability and peace inside of myself. And that really means honoring my own worth and my own value. And so a big part of my own journey with Chiron in the ninth house, which, you know, it aspects is every part of my chart. It's ruled by and it's in conjunct to my Venus and Pluto, and it's a yod with my Venus, Pluto, yod with my Mercury, Neptune. It opposes my moon. So one of the main evolutionary themes here for this lifetime is finding my authentic worth and my authentic value in living according to my own natural values, which means relative to the archetype of alienation or being misunderstood, I have to learn how to be Taurus, to trust myself and to be alone if need be. Because people may not understand the path that I'm walking or the way that I might choose to share myself as a teacher. But in the end, it's about me understanding it. It's about me being authentic to that. So as I've often mentioned here, that music is my deepest calling in life. It's always sort of waiting for me, Taurus, to embrace. And I feel like my deepest teaching really does come through my music. And I feel the most grounded and the most authentic in that space as well. So that's a little snapshot of my own journey. And, you know, karmically, this Taurus Chiron is many, many, many lifetimes of being a monk, being an ascetic, traveling with everything I needed on my back.
Totally.
You know, making money on the side of the road by giving people readings or whatever, or maybe stealing a book and reading it and then having something to say about it and having guilt about that and, you know, things like that. So for me to almost move from this monk ascetic mentality, which resonates with alienation, like I'm always traveling, always moving, and to actually come into a more embodied expression of living my truth, but not needing to run away. It allows for a greater amount of wealth and stability to grow in my own life as well. Because the inner richness of Taurus, in a way, is denied if I'm constantly running, if I'm constantly moving towards something. And that Taurus ninth house symbology is stillness. And all the teachings come from there. So me being comfortable, me feeling nourished and grounded and stable. And that second house, fourth house, yod is a really big part of that, which really speaks to stability and ground and family and home, all of which is slowly unfolding in my own personal life.
Yeah, and Jupiter just entered your fourth house, so
Sure did.
that's beautiful. I love that. Justin Bieber, Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, Justin Bieber. So here we have Marilyn Monroe, and I got a couple quotes here. Oh no, this is Justin Bieber. I'll quote her in a moment. Quote him in a moment. So she's a really cool example, and I'm bringing her chart out because she really reflects the psychology of lifelong alienation. She's also Taurus in the ninth house, and her Chiron is conjunct Venus in Aries. So Venus in Aries, it's trining Neptune in Leo in the first. This is very much a sex symbol or a sex icon, and one that's sort of become larger than life. We also have Pluto on the North Node in Cancer in the 12th house. So she's like this collective symbol of the feminine. And it was really pivotal culturally at that time as someone that people regarded as this ideal feminine form. People idealized her. She became an icon. She was worshipped. But there's this whole wound around the commodification of her body. And her whole thing was she just really wanted someone to love her for who she is. You know, we have Moon conjunct Jupiter and Aquarius in the 7th house, which really speaks that alienation of no one really understands me. opposing that larger than life Neptune and Leo, where she's a celebrity, and we have this 7th house Aquarius dynamic, which actually just wants friendship, wants to really share an equality. So Taurus in a balsamic conjunction with Venus in Aries, and Taurus in Chiron and Taurus in the 9th house says that at the core, she's felt like a liar. She felt like a fraud. And this really came out later in her life when she was doing acting roles, and she just wasn't showing up on time. She wasn't really present for it. And eventually she, died of an overdose with her own drug addiction. This signature to me really points to a deep wounding in value and self-worth. And it's very easy to stay running, right? So the 9th house, Venus, Taurus, what's that restlessness here? Substances, distraction of the senses, and all these opportunities. Venus and Aries in the 9th house, how this was a very self-directed soul who was orienting herself towards success. And this Venus is beyond the square to the nodes, but the south node is Capricorn in the 6th. So she's a hard worker. And that Venus relative to that hard worker, Capricorn 6, is I'm going to go off alone, build my career, do my work, become successful. But all to the neglect and to the disrespect, really, and to the denial of her own intuitive body. 9th house Venus, 9th house Taurus, where the wounding was not being authentic and in honor of her own senses, her own sovereignty, her own value beyond being a commodity. And commodification is a Taurus Venus thing. So those are a couple thoughts on that. And when you look at that, you could also kind of feel like there is probably a much richer, deeper philosophical reality underneath her that wasn't seen, right? Beyond like the image and the sex icon that everyone knew her as. This right there says a very deep thinker, someone that really had her own inner cosmology, her own way of being, and speaking her truth, sharing herself authentically was probably something that she didn't maybe know she could do.
Mm-hmm.
And I relate to this piece where this Taurus element of you can get stuck somewhere. Something that works, you're surviving, it works, you can get stuck there forever. But it's not necessarily functional. It's one of the biggest issues with Taurus. You can just get really used to things as they are, even if it's crappy.
Yeah. Gosh, she was only 38 when she died.
36.
Or 36? I mean,
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oof.
Justin Bieber. So I was watching videos of him this morning. I'm like, man, this guy's so cool. I didn't realize how cool he is. Did your kids ever get into him?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Definitely. And he does he pairs up with a lot of people and does some great duets with other well-known artists. And even, who is it? Some country music star I can't think of right now. But I feel like he's always got a good message when he does that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a very altruistic and sincere person.
Uh-huh. And
Chiron and Virgo in the 9th, squaring the nodes. So you won't be surprised if I bring in Christianity.
Nope.
And that's it. So, he went through this phase of kind of this feeling chaotic and overwhelmed by all the fame and attention. I mean, for God's sakes, North Node conjunct Pluto. I guess that would be, balsamic with Jupiter in Scorpio in the 9th house. It's like the energy of his whole being becoming a collective symbol, no longer his own. And just the loss of privacy is really strong in that signature. We feel like everyone's always looking at you. And so, of course, he's a Pisces sun, conjunct Saturn in the 3rd house. So a lot of stuff around media, always watching him, always being there. It was really overwhelming, and he got reactive at times and really needed to kind of find a deeper sense of meaning in his own life. So at some point he reconnected with Christianity. And I'll quote something that I heard from him this morning. I'm going to do this so God will love me, but that's not what God is. And he's referring to like people that will do conditional things because of this idea of not being good enough.
Uh-huh.
It's not you do this and then I love you. He loves you no matter what. It's if God is based on love, then he loves you no matter what, not because you're doing something. So it's very much healing that Virgo ninth house dynamic of, well, there's something inadequate about me. And, North Node, Scorpio in the 12th, that the whole psychology and the unraveling within the signature would be, there's something wrong with me and I'm inherently never going to reach this ideal of perfection. And so there can be a deep nihilism, a loss of meaning, where it's very easy to escape towards all kinds of things like sex or drugs or whatever, or even fame. But the sense of meaninglessness is something that I imagine would have really been present for this soul. And reorienting towards, here we have a relived dynamic with that Taurus South Node, which is ruled by Venus in Pisces in the 4th house. So sweet, that Venus is healing, getting your act together, cultivating health and wellness through Venus, Pisces, the 4th house, a family, relationships, and a way of living in life where human relationships can be caring for and loving the most tender and delicate places within us. So he loves babies. He loves dogs. And there's this one experience where he formed this relationship with this little girl that was a fan of his who was sick. And she loved him so much and was so touched by him. And he really opened up his heart to her. And then when she died, he was really sad. It was really, really hard for him. But there's a deep spiritual path for this soul here in being of service to other people. And so this Chiron in Virgo in the 9th house is really a message of healing. And so his relationship to Christianity is one of, we get to heal and work on ourselves, but it's embracing the love that is here for us. And he just loves it. It's, as far as I'm aware, it's been a big part of his life for several years now. And his message when he gets on stage, from the things that I've seen, is he has a very positive message. He says, things can get better, right? That's his spiritual message. Things can get better. Virgo in the 9th house.
Right.
So, but to imagine from the point of view of the wounded healer, that for him to feel like there's something broken about him, right? And also like his innocence was taken away from him. 12th house. Right? And thus in that innocence being disillusioned, this feeling of being broken or wounded, but then turning towards this energy that is unconditionally loving and forgiving, forming a relationship to that. So I'm very curious about how his journey will continue to unfold as he matures and, finds his way to be in service. Because I would definitely say this soul is, I don't know if he's entering spiritual state. When I hear him talk about spirituality, I don't feel any kind of, it doesn't feel like it's about religion to him. There's this feeling that his consciousness is a little bit universal. So I'm just kind of curious to watch and see how that unfolds for him.
Well, he's, how old is he?
He would be 25. Is
that right? 20, something like that. So a lot of times, until somebody's really reached their Saturn return,
that's right.
You can't really, so many souls, I think you're one of the exceptions, Ari, but a lot of souls, you can take that kind of transit where, in terms of catching up to where they've been in another time before you can really tell where the soul is at, evolutionarily speaking, because of having to live through certain things or reconnecting with a body of work or a set of teachings that resonate. So I think based on his message and, I feel like once he comes through that Saturn return, we'll have a real good idea of where he's at, evolutionarily speaking, also because that Saturn is, balsamic to his Mars. So it's like this maturation period that has to occur through the spiritual expression through that third house and how he voices those teachings and understandings, the spiritual things. And so I think that's when we'll get an idea. But I agree with you. He could very much be in that state and hasn't brought it to life yet. I think this is actually a new phase Pluto North Node, because the North Node moves clockwise.
No, Jupiter's balsamic.
Right, Jupiter's balsamic,
Yeah.
But Pluto North Node looks new.
Definitely new.
Right. And with Marilyn Monroe, it's the same thing. You've got a Pluto North Node conjunction, but hers was balsamic. See, this is balsamic.
That is balsamic, exactly. That's a little more intense.
Yeah, and so way more intense and just way more emotional, really, with that being so, that Cancer energy.
Yeah, and I want everyone to understand, when you see a balsamic, any kind of balsamic conjunction to any node, there's a karmic dynamic in this lifetime that simply needs to be completed. And you don't have control over that. That's one of the teachings here. There's certain things you cannot control.
So true. That's so true.
Yeah.
My Mercury is balsamic to my South Node, and that Mercury rules my Pluto and it rules my North Node. So that was one of these, like, in Sagittarius, right? So this is a life with undeniable, right? She will reconnect with what she knows to be true, and it's like once you walk through the door, you can't unwalk through it. Oh, they're new. They're actually new.
Mercury's new.
I thought it was balsamic, but that might, but that also to me represents what I was sharing in terms of this has been a process that's been in motion for some lifetime.
Yeah. I mean, to me, this says like this is actually about moving forward with it as a teacher.
Right. Exactly.
Whereas I have Sun Uranus balsamic to my South Node. And as far as the way that I've been able to internalize it is, this is me overcoming my reluctance to actualizing as a teacher, and completing this thing. Like that, there's always been this love-hate relationship to teaching. And so that Sun Uranus, as I'm understanding it, is like, you have to complete something here.
Yeah. So. You're doing it.
I definitely am. Get ready for more.
Yay, awesome.
Yeah,
I can't wait.
I was told in a dream once that having a family will be my catalyst for all of this. So
yay. Well, I know it's going to just grow exponentially in every direction. Well, thank you so much for being on this journey with me through Chiron, this Chiron series, and being on this journey with me, period. But we're going to be back in like a couple weeks, 3 weeks, I think, to look at Chiron in Capricorn or Chiron in the 10th
We'll
house.
be back next week. And we're catching up.
And maybe 2 weeks after that, we're trying to catch up before the end of the year.
Then the 11th house, before I give birth. So yeah.
Yeah. Definitely before you give birth. All right. Well, we're going to give birth to Chiron and Capricorn soon.
Yes.
Here, and we'll be letting you all know about it one way or another. Thank you so much for being here with me today, Ari.
Thanks, Kristin.
Namaste.